Hello everyone, I am PhantomHaxxor and welcome to another episode of Roblox How-To. In this episode, I am going to be going over loops in Roblox LuaU. This video will require basic Roblox scripting knowledge, and throughout this video I will explain what I am doing. If you do not understand something in this video, leave a comment and I will try to explain it as best as I can. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe as it lets me teach scripting on Roblox to more people. Remember, as always, all the timestamps are in the description. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. Loops let you execute code multiple times. Loops in Roblox can help you create countdowns, timers, iterate through tables, children, descendants, and more. There are a total of 3 types of loops in Roblox. There is the for loop, which is the most common, there is the while loop, and there is a repeat loop. All these loops have different purposes in Roblox LuaU, and by the end of this video, you will know how to use them all correctly. The for loop allows you to repeat code a set number of times. It can also allow you to go through an object's children, an object's descendants, etc. For example, you can use a for loop to count from 1 to 10. The for always comes first, and is followed by the variable equaling the starting value. In this case, the starting value equaling to 1. This is then followed by a comma, and then the end value. In this case, that would be 10, because we want to count from 1 to 10. If you want to, you can follow this up with a secondary comma, and then the increment value. However, the increment value is set to 1 by default, so in this case, it's not necessary to have the increment value. After that, we have to add a do at the end to make sure our code runs. And now, if we print the count value and run the game, we will see that it counts from 1 to 10. As I said at the beginning, the for loop can be used to go through an object's children or object's descendants. We can do this by using the getChildren or getDescendants method on the instance we are trying to get the children or descendants of. For example, if we are trying to get the children of this sign, we could set the sign to a variable in our code and use the getChildren method in our for loop. Doing this in code format would look something like this. You will notice that this for loop looks a little bit different than the for loop I used before, and that is because the getChildren method returns a table, which looks something like this, and the index equals the number on the left and the value equals the instance on the right. So the loop would have the index on the left and the value on the right. This will be followed by the in, which will then be followed by the pairs function, which allows us to loop through the table that was provided by the getChildren method. Again, make sure you don't forget the do at the end, otherwise your for loop will not run. The code looks almost the exact same if we are using the getDescendants method instead of the getChildren's method. All we do is switch out the methods. However, remember that the getDescendants method will return all the objects inside of an instance, even the ones that are inside of other children. So make sure you use getDescendants only if you want to get all the parts or objects inside of something, including the descendants. The while loop allows you to repeat code as long as a condition is true. This means you can use a while loop to loop your code infinitely. If you are using a while loop, make sure you always use a wait or else the game will freeze. Here is an example of a while true do loop. This loop will print 1 forever because the condition we provided it is true. However, we can use the while loop for much more than just printing 1 infinitely. Here is an example of how we could use the while loop to create a countdown. As you can see, the condition between the while and the do is time remaining is greater than 0. This means as long as time remaining stays greater than 0, the while loop will run. So, if we want to create a countdown, we can subtract a 1 every second, and what this will do is every loop it will subtract 1 until the value of time remaining goes to 0. And when it goes to 0, the loop will break and the code that's underneath the loop will run. In this case, it will print countdown is 0. We can also do this with the for loop. We can set the starting value to the amount we want the countdown to go from. In this case, we can make it 10 and make the ending value 0. Since the increment value defaults to positive 1 and we want to negate 1, we will have to use the increment value, and we can do that by adding another comma and adding -1 after that. Again, make sure you don't forget the do at the end, as your loop won't work otherwise. Now, if you print the variable we set the starting value to, it will print 9, 8, 7, and so on until it reaches 0. and then it will run the code that's underneath the loop, so in this case it will print countdown has ended. The repeat until loop allows you to repeat code until a condition returns a desired value. With this, we can also create a countdown similar to the ones we created with the for and while loop. In this case, we can set a variable to 10 and subtract 1 from the variable every second until the variable equals to 0. Then, if we print the variable, it will act as a countdown, and once the countdown is done, it will run the code underneath. Loops can be used for a lot of things in-game. It could be used for timers, countdowns, rounds, etc. Just anything that requires something to be looped over. But what if you want to break the loop for some reason? Let's check how we can do this. Breaking a loop is mostly used for loops that won't usually end, which means it's mostly only used for the while loop. Let's see how we can break the while loop. Let's say we want the while loop to only work if there is a person in-game, and if there isn't, we can break the loop. We can do this by first creating a while loop, and then checking the amount of people in the game through #game.players::getPlayers. The getPlayers method returns a table with all of the players in-game, and the hashtag at the beginning turns that table into a number. So in this case, it will return the number of players in the game. We can set that to a variable, and then we can add an if statement to detect how many people are in the game. And if the people we get from the getPlayers method equals to 0, we can break the loop. Remember that breaking a loop completely removes the loop, so if you wanted to restart it, you would have to create another loop. So in most cases, you would just run the code in the loop if the getPlayers method returns one or more players. So in this case, we could write an if statement to check if the players we got from the getPlayers method is greater than or equal to 1, and then we can run the code. And now this code will only run when we have one or more players in our game. Now that you know what loops are and their functions in Roblox Lua, you are just a little bit smarter in the Roblox coding world. Remember, if you're having any trouble with the materials presented in this video, I have left a link in the description that will redirect you to the Roblox developer wiki, and a link that will redirect you to the source material for this video. Thank you for watching this episode of Roblox How To. I am PhantomHaxxor, and as always, I will see you in the next episode. Have a great rest of the day.